Hey everybody, what's going on? This is your protein crash course. Everything you need to know about protein in this 10-minute video. Those of you who have taken some time to engage on our fat video and our carbohydrate crash course video, both on Instagram and here on YouTube or on Instagram TV, wherever you're watching this at. We really appreciate all that engagement. Please feel free to comment and leave any questions that you guys have down below. So like I said, this is your 10-minute protein crash course where we're going to talk to you guys all about everything you need to know to solidify your stance behind a high protein diet. Coming up. All right, so the first thing we're going to talk about is what's the societal hearsay. So if you walk into any commercial gym across America, what are you hearing out there in the world? You have to eat 6 meals per day. If you want to improve your body composition, you can only absorb 20 grams of protein per meal, so there's really no point in eating over that. 20 grams per meal, that's it. And the other thing is that, most people have a tendency to think that protein in and of itself is harmful or dangerous on your liver and your kidneys. So we're going to dive into that. We're going to answer those questions as well as the most popular, which I think is 4 questions. So the most popular questions that we get from a lot of our clients here at Metabolic Evolution are going to be the following. How much protein should you take in per day? How much protein should you take in per meal? How much protein can you actually absorb into your body, into your bloodstream? And then, is protein harmful or dangerous for you, your liver or your kidneys? Those are the 4 most popular questions that we get asked all the time. If you guys hear a question that's not in this presentation, go ahead and leave that down below and we'd be happy to answer that question for you. Keep in mind that we like to lead with education here. We like to provide you guys the data that you need to have a better understanding of protein before we actually give you the actual practical application of how to apply the amount of protein to your diet that's helpful and sustainable to you. So the first thing is, what is protein? All right, protein is one of the main macronutrients. Obviously we know that those are fats, carbs, and proteins. Protein contains 4 calories per gram. So as an example, if you were to have 50 grams of protein, that would yield you roughly 200 calories. However, protein is also the most thermogenic macronutrient of them all. Now, there's some very interesting research I'm going to talk to you guys about a little later on from Jose Antonio's lab, where he actually had participants of this research ingest 4.4 grams of protein per kilogram of lean body mass over a duration of time, with no negative side effects. Now that is a lot of protein, okay? That'd be the equivalent of me probably, having like 340, 350 grams of protein per day. Protein in and of itself is comprised of 20 amino acids. Now 9 of those amino acids are essential amino acids, and it takes all 9 of those amino acids to be able to complete a complete protein source. So if you guys want, you can go ahead and click in the description down below and you'll see that I have an essential amino acid video as well as a branched chain amino acids video in my video uploads. And that video goes into detail regarding which one is better, essential amino acids or branched chain amino acids, and I'll let you guys make your decision there. Why is protein ingestion so important? It's used to stimulate anabolism. Anabolism is the recreation or the rebuilding of any damaged tissues in the body. Now that does not just mean muscle tissue in and of itself. That means every single tissue in the body that could potentially be damaged. Protein is there to help repair and reconstruct those damaged tissues. As mentioned before, protein is the most thermogenic macronutrient, and even in an overfeeding state, I'm going to talk to you guys about this, it's very, very interesting, but even protein being eaten in a hypocaloric state did not yield any negative body composition responses. Very, very interesting. Slide 5. How much protein per day? Now, basically the research from Stu Phillips suggests that 0.8 grams to 1.1 grams of protein per pound of lean body mass should be enough, should be ideal. Most people would say, hey, it should be 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. However, that's not a factual statement, because we have clients coming into us from all different walks of life. Their weight varies drastically. And I think that a good method to utilize is lean body mass. But how do you actually determine lean body mass? Again, I'm going to go ahead and link a video on how you can determine your own lean body mass in the description down below, so you guys can have a better understanding of what your lean body mass essentially is and go from there. What are the key considerations in regards to how much protein you should ingest? I think that it comes down to a few very important topics. One of them is going to be, how big are you? how much muscle mass do you have? You know, I don't necessarily think male, female matters too much, but I do think the amount of lean body mass matters the most. So in some cases, you may have a female physique athlete eating as much as, let's say, a Gen Pop, a male athlete, because maybe their lean body mass is super duper close. Male, female doesn't seem to matter too much. What seems to matter is the amount of lean body mass that you actually have. What are the personal preferences of the client? Keep in mind that if I take a client from the Gen Pop who's used to eating maybe twice per day, and I immediately try to put her on the societal norm of 6 meals per day, she's probably not going to be able to jump into that. She's probably not going to be able to dive into that because it's going to be too much of a transition from eating twice per day to eating 6 times per day. So we have to think about, all right, what's going to be optimal for her specifically within the confines of her life. And, you know, in her case, it might be saying, all right, well, we just need you to eat 3 meals per day and make sure you're getting, you know, 30 grams of protein per meal. Again, depending on the size of her and how much lean body mass she actually has. So what are your goals? You know, do you want to build muscle? Do you want to get leaner? Do you just want to eat protein and eat all of your macronutrients for overall health, and you really don't care about the aesthetic details? You just want to be healthy. What is your goal, and then how does that translate to how much protein we're going to give you? Very important things to think about, but again, in most cases, I would say for the Gen Pop, 0.8 grams of protein per pound of lean body mass is probably going to be fine. However, if you are more on that other side of wanting to build more muscle and optimize your ability to build muscle and perfect your physique, we're probably going to want to stay on the higher end of that. So the other consideration is going to be anabolic resistance. Now, as you age, your body becomes less able to build more muscle mass and kind of have that same muscle protein synthetic response if you were to give yourself a serving of protein. So as an example, if I took a 30-year-old client who was at the peak, you know, and maybe they're like 165 or so lean body mass, and I could optimize muscle protein synthesis with a 40 gram of protein feeding, it's probably going to take more than that for somebody who may be in their 50s or 60s to get the same muscle protein synthetic response that the 30-year-old would get from 40 grams. So you want to take that into consideration as well if you are working with clients who may be, I don't want to say older because that kind of has like a negative connotation around it, but people who have been in the game for a longer period of time would need more protein per meal to elevate muscle protein synthesis to the same degree as a younger person. So how much protein per meal? Again, a huge question that we want to provide you guys some information on. Most people say that 20 grams of protein is really all you need as kind of the societal norm. You hear about it in gyms. You can't absorb any more than that. However, what you have to think about is that research that was done that showed 20 grams, 25 grams, or whatever it was to be optimal, they only utilized a single joint movement. So they're only stimulating, you know, one specific muscle. However, Stu Phillips kind of upped that ante, and he basically ran a research study where he conducted a total body split, and he saw that 40 grams of protein was more optimal than, you know, 20 grams of protein in a single joint movement. Now, why is that? I think it likely has a lot to do with the fact that you have caused more damage to the said fibers when you are doing a total body routine. Because obviously, you know, depending on the exercises that they utilized, you know, you would be stimulating more muscle fiber and thus would require more protein. So thinking about this logically, if you had more muscle and you are doing the same movements as somebody who's smaller than you and they would require 40 grams, if you are a larger individual, could you need or require more than 40 grams to optimize your ability to reach that muscle protein synthetic response if you're doing a total body training routine? I think you would, and I think that's something that we definitely have to explore because, you know, truth be told, there's not a lot of research being done on bodybuilders who have, you know, a high amount of lean body mass. So depending on your size, here are some examples on my PowerPoint here. I said that 25 to 30 grams of protein would likely be optimal if you are, let's say, smaller than 120 pounds of lean body mass. I think having that about 4 to 5 times per day would be more than enough protein to help you reach your goals. As far as a medium-sized individual, you know, 30 to 40 grams of protein per meal, let's say under 160 pounds of lean body mass, so anywhere around that or less than that, that would probably be an ideal amount of protein for you. And then on the larger side, so I'd say people who are 200 pounds of lean body mass or higher or anywhere close to 200 pounds of lean body mass, Ideally, 40 to 60 grams of protein may be ideal per meal to help you optimize muscle protein synthesis, just because you have more tissue. When you work out, you're creating more damage than somebody who is, less than your size. So the other side of that is, what if you're more than 200 pounds of lean body mass? How much protein do you need then? I know that a lot of people kind of picked fun, at Ronnie Coleman, having 100-gram of whey protein shakes after a workout. Like, you could go back to some of his training clips from, when he was king of the throne in the Olympia, and he would have 4 scoops of whey in a shake after a leg day. It's like 100 grams of protein. But did he need 100 grams of protein? Research has never been done on Ronnie Coleman, but he had 270, 80 pounds of lean body mass. Like how much protein is required? You know what I mean? But again, that's something to think about, and there's not necessarily much research to coincide with that. So I'll just leave that as a big question mark for right now. Moving on to slide number 7. How much protein can you absorb? This is a question that I get all the time. How much protein you can absorb? Simple. You can absorb all of it. All of it. Now, what your body does with that protein, that's a different story. Some of that will be excreted out in your urine. Some of that, I believe, will be stored for times of catabolism. So the higher your protein intake is, I think that there's kind of like a muscle full effect in regards to protein. Now, the more protein you have within your muscle, I believe that, in times of starvation or something like that, it's likely that your body will just utilize that extra protein as a means to avoid you from going into catabolism. The other thing to think about is that your body is actually made up of 16% protein. Besides water, glucose, like everything else is constructed of protein. Like everything else. Your body is made up of proteins. So to say that you can only absorb 20 grams at a time, that's bogus. It's definitely not true. And again, I'll just go ahead and say that your body can absorb all the protein that you give it. And just based off of my own personal experience, I believe that I was able to build the most amount of muscle when my protein intake was between 250 and 300 grams of protein per day. For a long time in my bodybuilding days, I was having 275 grams of protein per day. And again, I do think that's where I built the most amount of muscle. And keep in mind that my lean body mass is only about 165 pounds, right? So 165 pounds of lean body mass, and I was having, 100 grams more than that per day. And I felt like that was my sweet spot. So, and then also one of our assistant coaches, Zoe Panzerino, she was upwards of having 165, 170 grams of protein per day, and she was only weighing in like 115 or so. So we did increase protein, but I also think that for somebody who's coming out of a caloric deficit, that's the most ideal time scenario for you essentially to be able to increase protein a little bit. Or if you're going into a fat loss phase, that's also another ideal time for you to increase protein above what it might be in like your maintenance period or your off season. So one of the last things and the last question we're going to talk about is protein dangerous? Now, the simple answer to this question is no. And I'm going to look at my computer screen because I'm going to read you guys an exact question that was asked to Dr. Jose Antonio out of Nova Southeastern, who is kind of like the protein king when it comes to a lot of this research that's coming out in regards to high protein diets, and is a high protein diet harmful on your kidneys and your liver. And he was asked, I know that you've monitored blood markers for liver and kidney damage and have performed a body scan for bone physiology changes. Overall, have you seen any negative side effects with these very high protein studies? He was asked this exact question, and he says none, zero, zilch. And this is after at least 2 years of a diet that exceeds 2.2 grams of protein per kilogram on a daily basis. So again, we've taken, one of the best researchers in the world. He's conducted research studies where the participants are eating over 2.2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight every single day for over 2 years. And he's saying that there are zero negative side effects. Now, I want to leave you guys with some recommendations. The first thing is going to be, as a general recommendation, keep in mind that I can provide you a general recommendation, but depending on who you are, you're either going to be a little bit this way or you might be a little bit this way. General recommendation is just kind of, what is the fact, where should I start, and here it is. 1 gram of protein per pound of lean body mass, I think, is a good place to start. Okay, now as an example, if you're an average sized woman, maybe 150 pounds, you're 5'5", let's say for instance you might have 105 or so pounds of lean body mass, probably a good idea for you to start around 100 grams of protein per day. And I think that would be a great place for you, for your health markers to be elevated, for you to have enough amino acids in your bloodstream to stimulate recovery, to be able to grow muscle, to be able to be thermogenic and oxidize fat, to be able to preserve muscle. I think that's a really good place to start. Second thing to consider within the recommendations is, what types of protein should you ideally be eating? Now, there is a very large vegan crowd, which I do not want to neglect, because obviously I do work with vegans. And there's a lot of different considerations when it comes to veganism, which we can talk about in another video. But from a meat eater's perspective, I will say that I think the best sources of protein are going to be beef, it's going to be eggs, it's going to be oily fish like salmon, sardines, things like that. And then obviously chicken. Now what you have to think about too is that you get a lot of omega-6 fatty acids from chicken, but you don't get a lot of omega-3 fatty acids from chicken. So you essentially have to make sure you have some type of oily fish in there to get those omega-3s. You also don't necessarily get creatine from chicken, so you want to make sure you have some red meat in your diet to make sure that you can get the creatine benefits from the red meat. Now, if you're somebody who likes to supplement protein, because obviously we're all busy people, and in times where you're in a rush, it's easy to grab a shake. Something like Legion's Whey Plus can be an absolutely phenomenal source of protein to utilize. Shout out to Legion and Whey Plus for, in my opinion, making the best whey protein isolate on the market. Guys, that's slide 9 out of 9. This has been your protein crash course. If you have any questions, please go ahead and leave those down in the comments below. My name is William Grazione. You can find me on Instagram at William_Grazione. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.